But now let's talk about a third set of ancient technologies, food and water. So in the context of this discussion, I want you to think of food as a nature technology. I want to invite you to view food as a way to charge your body electric, a way to enhance the propagation of information and energy throughout your body and enhance your interaction with the field. You know, thinking around food is just like in any other sphere of our lives. We want to do things that enhance resonance with the blueprint and avoid things that supply the misinformation that begins to disrupt that resonance. So high life force quotient food enhances the body electric. And we all hear a lot about the nutritional value of food, like the number of vitamins and minerals in the food, or the macronutrient levels of the food, number of grams of carbs, or grams of protein, grams of fat. But really, more important than all of that is the life force quotient of the food. You know, we've already established that all foods are, you know, derived from the field, which is infinitely abundant with energy and information, but the way those forms of life are handled, with whether they're fresh and in their original form or processed and packaged or old and devitalized, is really going to affect how much energy and information is still available to exchange with our system. Right? Yeah. So, you know, just look at a ripe tomato or a fresh head of greens compared to a Twinkie or a cereal in a box. You can tell which one has a higher life force. Or even think about vegetables on a supermarket shelf for days versus those from the farmer's market picked the day of arrival, and you can sense the difference. You can actually see and feel and taste the vibrancy. So, this slide is very, very complex looking, but this is one of our best visualizations to date of the inside of a cell. You know, it's like a new kind of electron micrograph technology that's 3D. And basically what we're seeing here is like all the intracellular cell structures and molecules that are lining up to do particular things. You've got some intracellular organelles happening in here. So, you know, we spend a lot of time focusing on biochemistry in medicine without really paying much attention to the electrical nature of these biochemical interactions. And the collective charge of these electrical interactions, and most fundamentally, their interaction with the field itself, is what makes up our body electric. So there's three incredibly important aspects to our body electric. And there's more, but these are really important ones. So then they're really going to contribute to the electrical nature of your cell, and the health of your cell, which contributes to the health of our body. So you've got our cell membrane potential, which is the electric charge of our cell membrane, our cell membrane composition, which is the quality and ratio of fats in our cell membranes, and our mitochondrial functioning. And all of these things are directly influenced by your diet. So mitochondria produce ATP, which is the energy currency of the body. So cell membrane potential, our cells are literally like batteries. I think most of you know Bruce Lipton, right? Bruce Lipton describes that the collective charge of the batteries of our cell membranes totals an extraordinary 3.5 trillion volts. Have you heard that? Yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, it's, you heard it yesterday? I came late, darn it, I missed that. Anyway, but to put it in perspective, like a cell phone's 5 volts, laptop 19 volts. What do you think a Tesla Model S is? 375 volts. 3.5 trillion volts. That's, to me, just mind-boggling. So the charged membrane produces a net negative charge inside the cell and a net positive charge outside of the cell. And within a narrow but incredibly important physiological range, The more negative the charge, the more alkaline the intracellular environment is, the healthier the cell. And I think you can liken the cell membrane potential to the aura of the cell. It almost creates a force field that provides protection and resilience. And so it's been shown that as the cell membrane becomes less negative, the cell is more vulnerable to invasion with microorganisms. And as it becomes less negative still, research is showing it's a setup for cancer. So how do your cell membranes become less negative? When you become deficient in minerals, and when you become deficient in the electrons that normally come from eating high life force quotient foods. And also drinking pure structured water, walking barefoot on the earth, exercising, all of those things generate these electrons. But food is an incredibly important contributor. So in addition to creating the charge of our cell membranes, minerals also conduct information throughout the body through the propagation of charge. And the propagation of charge is responsible for contraction of muscle, the nerve impulses, the rhythm of your heart, contraction of your heart muscle. And of course, they participate in all sorts of biochemical interactions. And the more minerals you have within your cells, the more water your cells can hold. So it's really important because aging is like dehydration. So we've talked about the cell membrane potential. Another really important contributor to your body electric is your cell membrane composition. So what's the cell membrane made out of? Actually, fats from your diet primarily. And you've got basically water environment inside the cell, watery environment outside of the cell, and what separates those two compartments is this fatty membrane. Got phospholipids, and why am I explaining this? Because what? It's one of the most important aspects of cell health, the membrane. If you were to liken a cell to a body, the membrane would be like the brain of the cell. And we used to think that the nucleus with the DNA and all the genes was the brain, but really it's more like the sex organ. So the brain of the cell, the membrane, is because it's how the cell is communicating with all the environment of the body. It's where the cell-cell interactions are taking place. It's where these really interesting pumps are that keep the minerals inside the cell where they belong. So it's where the party is, really. And what a lot of people don't talk about is the vibratory nature of the fats in the cell membrane, which is extremely important and has everything to do with our diets. Have you all heard of omega-3, 6, and 9 fats? So a fatty acid is a really long chain of carbons, and then it's got double bonds at different places. And if the first double bond is 3 from the end, that's an omega-3 fat. And so where you have that first double bond, you're going to have this little tiny tail that vibrates really fast. And then omega-6, it's 6 from the end. Then you have this like longer piece that's vibrating, so a little slower. Omega-9, it's 9 from the end, so it's a little slower still. And then saturated fats are very straight, and they pack one next to another, so they don't vibrate as much. They're kind of in there. So the vibratory nature of all of these things and the constellation of all those vibrations is what allows our cells to be these vibrating oscillators. And so imagine in the brain, that's what is allowing the neurons in the brain to collectively function as this radio receiver and radio transmitter. So imagine how bad a low-fat diet is. Right? It's not good. So, the membrane is influenced by the types and then the quality of fats that we ingest. So very much influenced by whether they're pristine or rancid or damaged by heating, oxidation, free radicals. That absolutely influences the health of our cells. So here's a list of what I consider, next slide, fats that are good to embrace and what you might want to avoid. And for interest of time, I'm going to move on. You can take a picture if you want. So we just talked about cell membrane potential and cell membrane composition. What? Okay, take your time. Take your time. Yeah?
Do you need the 3, 6, and 9 omegas all with each other, or if I can only have a dose of 3 today, is that going to be better than none? Or do we need them in a group?
Well, because fats are not water soluble, they're fat, they collect. So you don't have to have them all at one time, every time. But a really good ratio, this is controversial, but a really good ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is 4.8 to 1.
6 to 3.
Yeah. So a lot of times people overdo the fish oil. They just they're dosing just omega-3 all the time. And they think, oh, I'm getting omega-6 in my diet. But I do a lot of cell membrane analysis on people, and sometimes the 3s are too high. And last thing I'll say about the fats is that the 3s, 6s, and 9s create a lot of fluidity in the membrane for many reasons I won't go into. But the saturated fats, because they pack so close together, they create tensile strength in the membrane. And you need the right mixture of both. So we've maligned saturated fats, but they are critical, absolutely necessary. So we don't, you want to make sure you get some of those as well. So now we'll talk about a third really essential component to our electrical health of our cells and therefore our bodies, the mitochondrial function. So what are the mitochondria? Well, I mean, there's whole books written on the mitochondria. And there's even a monthly scientific journal with multiple articles every month called the Mitochondria. Yeah, but to suffice it to say, they're little intracellular organelles that are the energy factories of our cell. And they take oxygen that we breathe and glucose from our food and run it through a series of chemical steps to produce ATP, which is the energy currency of the body. And the health of our cell directly correlates with how much energy our cell can produce. Literally, optimizing mitochondrial function is the holy grail in medicine. For me, I mean, I've been looking for ways to do that for my entire career because every single solitary disease I see, well, I should say almost, is either caused by or exacerbated by mitochondrial dysfunction. So you're talking fatigue, fibromyalgia, neurodegenerative diseases, cancer, everything, basically. So, so really, tomorrow I'll discuss a technology that is really helpful for the mitochondria, but today, suffice it to say, one of the most important things is that we want to make sure we're getting enough of the fatty acid linoleic acid, which is the type of fat that's vital because the mitochondria has a membrane. And it's got a different constellation of fats in the membrane of the mitochondria than in our regular cell membranes. And so sunflower seeds, soybeans, avocados, walnuts, egg yolk, some meats, critical for the mitochondria. And really what's also critical is eating the high life force quotient foods because they supply the antioxidants that protect the membrane from damage. There's a lot of oxidation happening there. And so the membrane gets damaged, and that's really the main reason why you lose, the mitochondria become dysfunctional over time. So it's important to think about the electrical nature of our biology, really, and how this helps us to interface with the energy and information in the field. And thus helps our resonance with our blueprint. And I'm asking you almost to let go of everything else you know about food for a moment, just to really kind of shift to this electrical understanding of food. And when we think about food as a nature technology to enhance our body electric, we can just start approaching it with greater respect. And understand that we need the proper amounts of the proper types of food in order to use this technology to enhance our health. If you eat too much food or eat the wrong types of food, it becomes a burden to the body instead of a benefit. I mean, if you overcharge your laptop, you're going to have a shorter battery life. Same with an electric car. The same holds true with food. You know, if you really don't need to eat as much food as you think you do to get the life force and the nutrients that you need from the food. So you're going to actually get more out of consuming slightly less, because you know you burden your intestinal tract if you're putting too much in there. And research actually shows you're going to live longer. So instead of a specific diet that one adheres to for a little while and then goes back to their own ways, I think dietary guidelines are good. You know, and then the specifics can morph and change depending on where you're at in your life and what stage of life you're in, how active you are, etc. But this is what I do. This is what most of my patients, when they do this, they feel a lot better. Okay, I think I can finish in time almost. Okay, because now I have my favorite nature technology to discuss with you.